Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and it appears that Trump is finally firing back at big tech. So what I thought I would do here, because I want to be fair, okay? I want to show you what's positive about this because it's hard for me to disagree with anything that Trump said or what Bill Barr said in this almost 20-minute press conference. Hard to disagree with that. But actions are going to speak louder than words. And then at the very end of this, China is brought into the mix where, it was a question by the press whether it was staged or not, whether that was something he wanted to end on. I can't really tell you that. But I can tell you this. I think that, number one, it may be a little too late to try to go after the technopoly, if you will, in the manner that they're acting. But at the same time, everything they say in this press conference is true. And if you look it up, like if you type in Trump and even, narrow it down to like the last day, try finding the whole press conference. It's not easy. And why is it that we now live in an era where a president gives a press conference against, basically big tech that is so out of control and so many people see it, and then they cover it in a manner like he's trying to censor Twitter because he's mad at Twitter. And don't get me wrong, his ego may have played a part. But anybody that watches this program damn well knows that big tech censorship is real. And that, even with 54,000 plus subscribers, it's hard to break 100 in the first 2 minutes of a broadcast. And we're fully demonetized on this platform without anything. They just say you're harmful content. Why am I harmful content? The vast majority of what I do is go over government documents, video footage like we're going to see, anything the press should be doing, should be letting the people see. So make sure you thumbs this video up, subscribe, share. Do remember that I am a documentary filmmaker. All my films are free on this platform because I think that technology is a double-edged sword, and you have to use their platforms against them. And Trump actually highlights this at one point. All right? Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Endings, Invisible Empire, A New World Order, Defined in Shade are all available free here in the documentary section. And today, for premium subscribers, an over 1 hour interview I did with the late, great Jim Mars, which is just, incredible, not only nostalgia for me, but, talk about some of these issues we're talking about today. We were talking about them then. And now they're coming full force. So without further ado, let's bring it in. Let's analyze this, because remember, we're going to go after big tech, but we're also going to put it into almost a left-right paradigm, right? A Republican, Democrat, a conservative, liberal paradigm. Let's not look at everybody's speech, which we should be doing, right? Number one. And number two, didn't you just allow Google and Apple to put COVID track trace apps within their operating systems to trace everybody in the country? Like, what is that? They're part of the technopoly. They're part of an institution that controls governments from all over the place. We keep talking about these nation-state paradigms, and they're just not that relevant.
Give you a signed copy of what I'm going to be signing in a couple of minutes, and you'll see exactly what we're doing. They've had unchecked power to censor, restrict, edit, shape, hide, alter virtually any form of communication between private citizens or large public audiences.
All true. 100%. Spot on.
There's no precedent in American history for so small a number of corporations to control so large a sphere of human interaction, and that includes individual people controlling vast amounts of territory, and we can't allow that to happen, especially when they go about doing what they're doing, because they're doing things incorrectly. They have points of view, and if we go by that, it's actually amazing that there was a success in 2016, but we can't let this continue to happen. It's very, very unfair.
Let's stop it. So here's another problem I have. He brings it into, well, there was some bias in 2016, but it wasn't anything like this. Well, actually, in 2016, they were starting to silence views. They were taking things off the internet. They were starting the demonetization process. And again, Trump, if you're going to cut these uh, big tech companies off, like you're going to cut Google off from NASA and get them away from artificial intelligence with our government and get them away from quantum computing with our government, good. And are you going to make them pay taxes? Please do. Then, YouTube or whatever, when they start having to pay taxes and, go by the laws, guess what? All them, they'll have real competition. They don't have any real competition. I'd love to see you do that. But I don't see you doing that when their operating systems are literally on this. And when this COVID crisis broke out, you were holding press conference talking about the good people, excuse me, at Google and Amazon, right?
And you look at the statistics and you look at what is going on, and I think everybody would very much agree with that, including Democrats, by the way. I saw quite a few Democrats are saying this is about time something is done. So let's see if they keep that decision after they hear that we agree with them. The choices that Twitter makes when it chooses to suppress, edit, blacklist, shadow, ban, are editorial decisions, pure and simple. They're editorial decisions. In those moments, Twitter ceases to be a neutral public platform and they become an editor with a viewpoint. And I think we can say that about others also, whether you're looking at Google, whether you're looking at Facebook, and perhaps others. One egregious example is when they try to silence views that they disagree with by selectively applying a fact check, F-A-C-T, fact check.
And this is, again, just the latest thing. More than I know, Trump got fact checked with his Scarborough thing. I've been talking about that Scarborough thing for years. So let's talk about that really quick, okay? Nothing resurfaced. Once again, Joe Scarborough left Congress shortly after. One of his interns was found dead in his office. And I've said this, whether Joe Scarborough did that or it wasn't an accident and something happens to that woman and they said to Scarborough, hey, you're going to get out of Congress, kind of like the old mafioso in The Godfather, when the guy comes into the party and is hanging out with all the gangsters and then all of a sudden he wakes up next to a dead hooker. Don't worry, we'll take care of you. Just listen to us. He's compromised one way or the other. Or let's go with the third scenario, that this woman actually did just fall and bash her head on the thing and was found dead there, right? Well, you could still drag Scarborough through the mud and not give him a position in the media, kind of like you did with Gary Condit when there was a plethora of evidence he was nowhere near involved in what happened to Chandra Levy. You understand how that works? So the media has always been corrupt. Just because this latest fact check, listen, I've been dealing with fact checks since I've been talking about 9/11 and getting pressed for it. All right, fact checks. Yeah, I check their facts all the time, and there's no repercussions for when the media lies outright to you about weapons of mass destruction and worse.
What they choose to fact check and what they choose to ignore or even promote is nothing more than a political activism group or political activism, and it's inappropriate. You look at what's happened, you look at where they're going, where they're coming from. I think you all see it yourselves. This censorship and bias is a threat to freedom itself. Imagine if your phone company silenced or edited your conversation. Social media companies have vastly more power and more reach than any phone company in the United States, more reach actually than your newspapers by far, more reach than a lot of your traditional forms of communication. Therefore, today I'm signing an executive order to protect and uphold the free speech and rights of the American people. Currently, social media giants like Twitter receive an unprecedented liability shield based on the theory that they're a neutral platform, which they are not an editor with a viewpoint. My executive order calls for new regulations under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to make it that social media companies that engage in censoring or any political conduct will not be able to keep their liability shield. That's a big deal.
Thank you. And especially when Facebook was taking all that money for advertising from pages all over the place, and then the algorithm would still work against you. See, this is a good step. But again, are you going to stop doing business with them? Are you going to denounce that we should all be tracked, traced, and databased via their operating systems for COVID-19? That's the question.
They have a shield. They can do what they want. They have a shield. They're not going to have that shield. My executive order further instructs the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, to prohibit social media companies from engaging in any deceptive acts or practices affecting commerce. This authority resides in Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act. I think you know it pretty well. Most of you know it very well. I would think you know it quite well, right? Additionally, I'm directing the Attorney General to work cooperatively with the states. He's going to be working very much and very closely in cooperation with the states to enforce their own laws against such deceptive business practices. The states have broad and powerful authority to regulate in this arena, and they'll be doing it also, and we encourage them to do it if they see exactly as we've been seeing. It's what they're doing is tantamount to monopoly, you can say. It's tantamount to taking over the airwaves.
Let's stop it, because again, and hopefully that'll fix my mic a little bit. I saw some people complaining about the mic. Let me know on there. It definitely has been weird. Let me know. But look, when you talk about monopoly, it's a technopoly, right? We're not prosecuting any of these guys at all. None of them are going to prison. Listen, here's the deal. If we want to take this country back, right? If we want to take this world back, because it's not just the United States. Again, all of these businesses are doing business overseas. That's why the Bilderberg Group is such a big deal. Nice and loud now? Thank you. Okay, awesome. Kind of loud. It's clipping. Oh. How about now? Oh, still too loud? How about now? Man, I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to get everything right, but let's try that. We're gonna go with that one. How's that? Your mic is loud and canny. Like, am I still in the tin can? Unbelievable. Better. Good. Okay. My goodness. Oh. Sorry, I'm getting frustrated. Thumbs the video up. I'm sorry. And by the way, again, we're fully demonetized on this platform. A platform we helped to build. The second largest platform out there. Right? The search engine. That's what YouTube is. Okay, that's why it's so important to stay on it. And Trump's about to talk about the importance to stay on it and why you can reach so many people on this. But the thing is that they should have liability, but you have to stop the technopoly. You have to put people in jail. And let's put them in a jail, right, where if they want to surveil us so much, why don't they wear body cams all the time? And there'll be cameras all over the place, wherever they are in prison, and 24/7 we can just tune into that as people. All these people that wanted the surveillance state, they'll get it in a prison. Because that's the only way we're going to stop this. Otherwise, the automation nation doesn't need us, guys.
Let it happen. Otherwise, we're not going to have a democracy. We're not going to have anything to do with a republic. Finally, I'm directing my administration to develop policies and procedures to ensure taxpayer dollars are not going in any social media company that repress free speech. The government spends billions of dollars on giving them money. They're rich enough, so we're going to be doing none of it or very little of it. As president, I'll not allow the American people to be bullied by these giant corporations. Many people have wanted this to be done by presidents for a long time. And now we're doing it, and I'm sure they'll be doing a lawsuit, and I'm also sure that we're going to be going for legislation in addition to this, and the legislation will start immediately. And I tell you, I've been called by Democrats that want to do this, and so I think you could possibly have a bipartisan situation, but we're fed up with it, and it's unfair, and it's been very unfair, and we'll see what happens. Any questions?
Mr. President, given your concern with Twitter, have you given any consideration to deleting your account, to just walking away from this platform you've been so critical of?
See that? And that's my point. And this is why I feel for Trump at times. They're like, why don't you just delete your account? Because you have to use that platform against them. That's why I'm not just going to leave YouTube. They're going to have to kick me off. I've been here since 2007. I helped build it, right? I realize that it's a platform that allows me to still reach a ton of people, right? Isn't that reality? And you know, Trump is extremely hypocritical. I saw Flickoff talk about BDS. Well, I mean, you just look at somebody like Pompeo, right? And Pompeo is out there openly saying if you're anti-Zionist or against Israel policy, no matter what it is in any way, you're anti-Semitic. You can't criticize Israel, right? And that shouldn't be law. So again, I don't like the framing of this is conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican. You know, he talks about the Democrats coming on board. Everybody, first of all, everybody should say we need to cut ties with these tech companies right now, regulate them, and stop them from getting as out of control as they are. But the problem is they're part of the military-industrial complex. They're part of the predator class system. You know, Google is an extension of DARPA, guys. That's the reality.
You know, if you weren't fake, I would not even think about it. I would do that in a heartbeat.
I'm real,
but
sir.
the news is fake. If you look at what gets printed in newspapers, if only the public could understand where, you know, they're reading a story and they think it's real and it's not real in so many cases. And I'm not saying in every case. You have some great journalists. You have some journalists that I have great respect for. But largely, I find, at least in a political sense, there's so much fake news, it's disgraceful. I would do that in a heartbeat if I had fair. If we had a fair press in this country, I would do that in a heartbeat. There's nothing I'd rather do than get rid of my whole Twitter account. But I'm able to get to, I guess, 186 million people when you add up all the different accounts and add Facebook and Instagram. It's a lot of people. And that's more than the media companies have, frankly, by a lot. And so if I get a story that's wrong, I can put a social media. I don't usually use the word Twitter. I say social media. But I put something out, and the next day or the next hour or the next minute, everybody's reading about it. So I'm able to refute fake news, and that's very important. I'd like to ask the Attorney General, please, to say a couple of words. And
No, let me stop it right here. He's right. Look, don't love Trump, far from perfect, don't defend him all the time, but everything he said there was correct. I mean, you can look at Russiagate, but then at the same time, the media won't challenge him at all on Assange. They're all on board with that censorship, too. They're all on board for Trump to bring Assange over here. So, I mean, we're talking about double and triple standards beyond all this. And really, a web of villainy, right? Call it what you will. They're pragmatic, Jason. No. This is the kind of stuff that leads to the future doesn't need us, to transhumanist nonsense. So we'll have to turn it up for Barr here. Here we go.
he's very strongly behind it, backing it very powerfully. And again, we're going to be doing this. We're also going through Congress.
Well, as you mentioned, Mr. President, one of the things that I found has the broadest bipartisan support these days is the feeling that this provision, Section 230, has been stretched way beyond its original intention, and people feel that on both sides of the aisle. This was adopted 25 years ago to protect the fledgling industry, and its purpose was to allow websites that were serving as essentially bulletin boards for diverse third-party content coming on, to say that you're not responsible for the content of that third-party information. And it also tried to encourage these companies to take down things like child pornography or human trafficking advertising and things by saying if you act to remove this kind of objectionable material, you won't be liable for taking it down.
Exactly. And instead, if you've been out there, platforms like Twitter and Instagram and YouTube are underground havens for the trafficking of children. They've been exposed again and again. And what happens when they are? There was that Mouthy Buddha documentary that did a good job. What happened to that? Got taken off because it got too many views. You know, that's something that Titus has done videos on. Titus Frost, shout out. And again, These underground rings where we can't find all the pedophiles and we can't break up the Epstein pedophile ring, but we want to track and trace you for COVID 1984 with these same companies that have shielded themselves from liability in a law that was meant to make sure that they couldn't get sued for someone posting crap like that they still can't regulate, but they'll regulate doctors. Or they'll regulate live streams from Dan Dix showing people in the streets protesting.
Now it's been completely stretched to allow what have become really behemoths who control a lot of the flow of information in our society to engage in censorship of that information and to act as editors and publishers of the material. So when they put on their own content, like fact-check content onto other people's content, and when they curate their collection, and when they start censoring particular content, including in many cases at the direction of foreign governments like Communist China, they become publishers, and they shouldn't be entitled to the same kind of shield that was set up earlier. Now, this executive order is a very strong step toward addressing this problem. It sets up a rulemaking procedure that will eventually be under the FCC to try to get back to the original interpretation and understanding of Section 230. It also empowers the Attorney General to work with state attorneys general to come up with model legislation that addresses this at the state level. And we're preparing federal legislation, which we will be sending over shortly for review at the Office of Management and Budget. So this is an important step to get back to the original understanding. There's a bit of a bait and switch that's occurred in our society. These companies grew because they held themselves out as public forums, as free public forums where a variety of voices and diverse voices could come on and be heard.
It's not often that I agree with Bill Barr. It's not often. But everything he's saying here is the real deal. They built their backs on the loose changes of the world. They built their backs on people sharing information, right? Whether it was right or wrong. Remember, believe me, there was a time where every single celebrity death from Paul Walker to Robin Williams was Illuminati murders, right? Every single one of them with all sorts of fake news articles, like literally from just made up sources. That's out there. That's real. But how much different is that from what the mainstream media narratives that have been pushed over the decades are? It's not much.
That's how they grew. That's how they attracted the eyeballs. That's why people joined them. But now that they have become these very powerful networks of eyeballs, now that they've grown by holding themselves out as free public forums, they've now switched. And they are using that market power to force particular viewpoints. And that's wrong. And it has to be addressed not only through this executive order, but I think litigation going forward and by further action on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, do you have any questions for the Attorney General?
Yes, actually, I do. Mr. Attorney General, not only have you been against Section 230, and the President has been against Section 230, the Vice President has said he's against Section 230. Do you believe that the executive order that the President is about to sign in any way repeals or amends Section 230?
No, it doesn't repeal Section 230, and I'm not against Section 230 if it was properly interpreted and properly applied, but it's been stretched, and I don't know of anyone on Capitol Hill who doesn't agree that it's been stretched beyond its original intention. I think this will help get back to the right balance.
Mr. Attorney General, can you give us more details on the legislation both you and the President referred to? What do you want to do in that legislation?
Well, we're still reviewing a number of possibilities, and it'd be premature for me to discuss.
And one of the things we may do, Bill, is just remove or totally change 230. What I think we can say is we're going to regulate it. It's a provision, and we're going to regulate it. You take a look at this as an example. This was just out. Twitter moments on the Mueller witch hunt. So we won. We were in the right. You see what's happened. It's a total fraud. It was a total fraud. 76 to 1. Okay, 76 to 1. You look at it, you think that's fair?
He's got a damn good point there. I remember they were selling you Russia, 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 but it goes beyond framing up Trump as a Russian agent. It also goes into framing up WikiLeaks as a foreign intelligence service. And his administration takes advantage of that too. And they're still trying to extradite Assange. That goes on in September. The hearings start up again. So let's not get it twisted. This man still leverages what the law in his executive power, against freedom of speech as well. That's the double standard here that people have to understand. Everything he's saying here is true, but their motive wasn't just to take down the president, it was also to demonize hacktivists, leaktivists, and public disclosure organizations. Basically anybody that would expose war crimes. And remember, that's discussed in, let's just get this right here. In The New Digital Age by Eric Schmidt and Jared Cohen back in 2013, how they should be prosecuted vigorously.
Twitter classifies the term illegal alien as hate speech, illegal alien, and viciously. You look at what China, just article after article. Here's one, this is the arbiter. This guy is the arbiter of what's supposed to go on Twitter. He's the one he thought, and if you use CNN as a guide, CNN, which is fake news, he uses CNN as a guide. His name is Yoel Roth, and he's the one that said that mail-in balloting, you look mail-in, no fraud, really? Why don't you take a look all over the country? There's cases all over the country. If we went to mail-in balloting, our election all over the world would look as a total joke. It would be a total joke. There's such fraud and abuse, and you know about harvesting, where they harvest the ballots and they go and grab them and they go to people's houses and they say, sign here. No, it doesn't work out. Now, an absentee ballot, you can't be there or you're sick, and you go and you register and you do all sorts of things to get that ballot, and there's good security measures, but where they send out, like in California, millions and millions of ballots to anybody that's breathing. Anybody in California that's breathing gets a ballot.
Now, hold on, let me stop you, because everybody thinks that what he's saying there is exaggerated. Let me show you something. Now, I'm not in California. I'm in New York, and we're leaving. And I want to remind people of this. And I hope I'm not blowing up this woman's spot, because she's just a friend on Twitter, or not Twitter, Facebook. But 8 hours ago, she posted this. I doubt my father registered for an ID. He's been in a He's been in a coma for 4 years. Anyone have thoughts on this? Okay? So this is like, you have the new government ID. So she's wondering what's going on. Is this another type of voter fraud where they're going into the elderlies and trying to get their identification to vote if we do it this way? I don't know. But you can check this out yourself. She blurred out the appropriate information. But again, her meanwhile, at the DMV, I can't register my car right now because they've just taken the phone off the hook in Otsego County. I live in a state right now where I can get a Big Mac delivered right now by DoorDash. Right now, Big Mac to my door. I can't get a handgun or my car registered. But I should also just trust mail-in voting. I don't care who you're voting for. Again, the guy has a great point. It's as bad or worse than digital voting, like the voting machines. We need traditional voting in polls, just like we always have. And we have the technology, again, where it doesn't have to be corrupt, where it would make it very difficult for them to rig it. But we don't want to use that technology in that manner.
That's not true.
So
California
excuse me, wait a minute, I'm not finished. So here's your man, and that's on Twitter. And the amazing thing is he's wrong. And even no matter who it is, they will admit that he's wrong, because there's tremendous controversy on mail-in voting. And I can say this, the Republican Party cannot let it happen. Go ahead.
Well, Gavin Newsom, Governor Newsom, has not sent ballots out to everybody in California. They're only going to registered voters.
How many are there? How many are there?
So what your tweet said was not wrong.
Okay,
That was not correct. It was wrong.
Okay, oh, really? So when he sends out 28 million ballots, and they're in all the mailboxes, and kids go and they raid the mailboxes, and they hand them to people that are signing the ballots down the end of the street, which is happening, they grab the ballots, you don't think that happens? There's ballot harvesting where all of us, we had 7 elections for Congress, and they were like tied, and they lost every one of them because they came and they dropped a whole pile of ballots on the table. But you don't think they rip them out of mailboxes? It's all the time, you read about it. You can read about it, take a look. They do worse than that. In some cases, they won't sell them, like to a Republican community, a conservative community. They don't happen to send the ballots to those communities. And there's no way of checking. No, you have to go and you have to vote. Voting is a great thing. Voting, we would be the laughing stock of the world. And if you just use common sense, you know that's going to happen. But they raid the mailboxes. They can even print ballots. They get the same paper, the same machine, nothing special. They get the same paper, the same machine. They print ballots. And Bill would have to do a great job to catch him doing it, or your state authorities would have to. But you have tremendous potential, and you have tremendous fraud and abuse, but you have tremendous potential for fraud and abuse. Go ahead.
Mr. President, you had said in one of your tweets that you would consider shutting down Twitter and social media companies. Did you actually mean you would want to shut down an
Well, I
American
think it's
company?
going to be, I tell you what, I have so much, it seems, influence over Twitter in the sense of people wanting to go Twitter because of what I have. I have a vast number, we have a number of platforms, as you know. We have millions and millions of people. I think this, if Twitter were not honorable, if you're going to have a guy like this be your judge and jury, I think you shut it down as far as I'm concerned, but I'd have to go through a legal process to do that.
How would you shut down an
I
American
don't know, I'd have to
company?
ask the lawyers, I'd have to go through a legal process. If it were legal, if it were able to be legally shut down, I would do it. I think I'd be hurting it very badly if we didn't use it anymore. I mean, we have other sites we could use, I guess.
That's a problem. Legally shut it down. You see, Twitter's a tough one, right? Now, if you legally wanted to shut Google down for espionage, and then YouTube or put a freeze on it or take it by the government, I mean, we could argue those things. I don't like private corporations just being taken over by the government. But when they're pseudo-government agencies anyway, like, again, Google, NASA, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, but then Google goes and works overseas, internationally, working with the COVID track trace database, the track tracers. My goodness.
Would have to develop other sites, and I'm not just talking about Twitter. Look at Facebook. Look at the tribunal they set up at Facebook. This woman who, you remember testifying recently in Congress, her hatred was so incredible toward the Republican Party and me that there is no way you can get a fair trial. So this is not like it's supposed to be. This is not like it's supposed to be. So we're going to see what happens. And you know what? I guess it's going to be challenged in court. What isn't? But I think we'll do very well. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, as to potential litigation, can you discuss the timing of that and what is the remedy that you're going to be seeking?
No, what I was referring to, there is litigation going on all the time on Section 230 and its scope, and we would look for appropriate vehicles to weigh in and file statement of interest.
So you wouldn't be filing an individual?
Not necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, are you worried about the situation on the border between India and China?
India. He loves India so much, he's never asked a question other than an India question, and that's okay. I just got back from India, right?
You know what? We're going to just skip the China stuff. We're just going to skip to China because he starts talking about trade with China and he's going to announce something with China. It's almost over. But you get the gist of it, guys. Everything he said was correct, except for possibly taking over and stopping these websites. But then again, when the websites are against fair practices, I would say open them up for lawsuits across the board and say that they are not protected. And then racketeering charges, because they're obviously working with one another, right? But then again, they went after Flynn for the Logan Act, and none of these Bilderberg attendees have ever, been taken down for the Logan Act. And then on top of that, last Bilderberg, Jared Kushner's there, and Mike Pompeo comes in for the second day to get on a boat to give a speech at a castle. All right? So we're talking high-level predator class infighting here. And then, you read other stories and, the technopoly is getting behind Biden. People like Schmidt are getting behind Biden. Look, as long as they're allowed to exist and expand, they don't care. That's what they want to do, because they want to control every aspect of our lives till they take it away from us in this automation nation where a future doesn't need us. Guys, I'm fully demonetized on this platform, $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. Big donors. We got a few days left until the end of May. I don't know that I'm going to be able to hit the road on the 1st, as I have not been able to register my car or get anything through. And then when I do, maybe it's going to be a week or two before I get plates, but we're definitely getting ready to make that trip. So, we'll start again on the 1st. But I also did watch, by the way, Who Killed Jeffrey Epstein's first episode over on Investigation Discovery. Have not watched the Netflix documentary yet. I'm going to do a full review on this. I'm going to show you where you can watch the full episode for free on their website. Make sure to thumbs this video up, subscribe, share. Go check out all my documentary films for free in the playlist section. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and especially right now, Shade the Motion Picture. Check me out on Rockfin. Again, paying members get to check out Spend an Hour with Jim Marrs throwback video from, I think, 11, 12 years ago. And then for free, you can check out Wear a Sweater and Smile Like a Supervillain with Bill Gates if you just sign up and follow me. Guys, thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribed. Love you. See you on the flip side.